Hello and good evening. We'd like to call the meeting of the Beaver Traffic Commission to order. Today is Thursday, May 1st, 2025. You with a roll call. Commissioner Beeler.
Present.
Commissioner Moore.
Present.
Commissioner Oaks Moran.
Present.
Commissioner Bobia.
Present.
Commissioner Bansky.
Present.
Chair Conway is present and Vice Chair McLean is absent but excused. Next up then, visitor comments. Is there anybody who would like to speak on something not on the consent, or sorry, not on the public hearing portion? We only have the one card from. Okay. All right, with that in mind then, we'll move next to staff comments. Mr. Kasha.
Just before you, there is additional 2 written testimonies for PC 863, 864, and both are in favor of the recommendation.
Okay.
For the purpose of broadening the defendant's stay apart.
Thank you. Next up then, consent agenda. We have the minutes from the last time we met, which was February 6th, 2025. We did not meet in March or April. And then update the final written order for TC 861 truck parking in Southwest Nimitz Avenue north of Hall Boulevard and Southwest Sears Drive. I'd make a motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Chair Conway made a motion, Commissioner Fiedler second. Begin with roll call then. This way, Commissioner Rand.
Abstain.
Okay,
I wasn't here.
thank you. Commissioner Moore, or sorry, Commissioner Fiedler.
Staying, I wasn't here.
Excellent. Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
All right. Commissioner Bobby. Commissioner Bansky.
Aye.
And then Chair Conway, aye. So motion passes 4-0 and 2 abstains. So thank you. Yes. All right. Next then we'll begin the public hearing portion. We have 2 public hearings this evening. PC 863 and 864. We begin with reading of the chair's statement. Traffic Commission will now hold a hearing on PC issues 863 parking restrictions on Old Beaver Hinsdale Highway and 864 parking time restrictions on Southwest Broadway Street. The hearing will begin with a report from the city traffic engineer, followed by a testimony from the person who submitted the proposal. City traffic engineer's report will list the applicable substantive criteria, the reasons behind the recommendation. We then hear testimony from other interested parties. If you wish to testify, please complete one of the yellow cards available at the table near the entrance of the room and give it to our recorder. Evidence and testimony must be directed to criteria in section 6.02.060, determined to be applicable by the city traffic engineer or other criteria, current city, metro, tri-net, state, or federal laws or policies which you believe apply to our decisions. After the hearing is closed, the commission will deliberate on the evidence received and make an oral decision to approve with condition, or deny the proposal. Decisions will not be final until a final written order is signed by the chairperson. All persons who testify receive a written notice of the final decision of the commission. Decisions of the commission or recommendations to city council become effective after approval by council. Typically, traffic commission recommendations appear in the consent agenda of the council and are approved by council without discussion. City council ordinarily does not conduct a public hearing on such recommendations. Any decision of the commission may be appealed to city council. When an appeal is properly filed, a separate hearing be scheduled before council. Any appeal must be filed within the city recorder within 10 days of the date of the traffic commission's final written order. And the procedures related to the written appeals are available from the office of the city traffic engineer and the city recorder. This will apply to both of our hearings here, and we'll begin with TC 863 and a reading by Mr. Cutting. Oh, sorry, Ms. Hall.
Okay, PC 863 parking time limit revisions on Southwest Old Beaverton Hillsdale Highway. I'm going to call it Old BHH for short. So this is a section of Old BHH that we are talking about this evening. So between Broadway and Lombard. So an aerial image here for you today. This is a dead-end street. On the north side, there is local business access in the form of 2 driveways. And on the south side, there are 33 dead-end parking spots. Being restriped as we speak. So not super visible in this picture, but they will be back. Today, parking is prohibited between the hours of 3:30 a.m. and 5:30 a.m. The surrounding streets, so Broadway, in this case, has parking time limits in place between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday. This evening, staff is asking the commission to recommend imposing parking restrictions between the hours of 8 a.m. and 9 p.m., restricting parking to 2 hours during that time period, and implementing 1 30-minute spot shown there just off of Broadway in the blue. The remaining spots, the 32 head-in spots, would be under the 2-hour time restrictions. So staff is asking the commission to make this recommendation based on a few things. First, we recognize that the parking demand on Broadway continues to evolve. There's new residential units coming online. They're at the corner of Old BH Highway and Broadway. And there are more businesses in the area that are open later into the evening. So that's really driving the need to extend the hours where we're imposing time restrictions to ensure that parking continues to turn over in order to support those commercial uses. While the residential building does have 314 on-site parking spaces, residents must pay an additional fee to use those spaces. If public on-street parking is available directly outside that building for free and without time restrictions, residents may opt for parking there rather than using the on-site parking. We are basing this recommendation on parking occupancy data that was gathered between July and December 2024 as part of the ongoing work on our downtown parking management plan. For this particular recommendation, there was parking occupancy data analyzed around 4 of the existing residential buildings in the downtown area. And we saw a couple things from that data. First, on-street parking near residential buildings tends to exceed that 85% occupancy rate, which would be when we consider parking fully utilized between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. and 6 to 10 p.m. So that's really driving recommendations to make the changes to the hours. Where there are no time restrictions near residential units, occupancy during those evening hours exceeds 88%. Implementing these changes to manage parking allow us to encourage turnover during the evening hours while businesses are still open, and encourage the residents to use the on-site parking that is available to them, making sure that we can maintain the on-street parking for our businesses if needed. So the applicable criteria here is 1D, accommodate the parking needs of residents and businesses in a safe and equitable fashion. That concludes my comments. I will just note that we do have staff in our community development parking team that are also here available to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Thank you. We'll then open the public hearing portion and begin with reading cards. I only have 1 card. Not sure if anybody else wanted to speak, but Mr. Wilson, sir, you have the floor.
There.
Yep, you need to come up. You need to read the green card. State your name, address, whether you represent yourself or a business, whether you are or. Speak into the microphone clearly.
Can you hear? Or do you want this coach to speak?
That one.
We want you to use the one with the green light on.
Yep.
it, Chuck.
To the right.
Yeah, dang it, I'm all messed up.
Well, we're fancy here, so
All
we
right.
gotta.
Anyway, my name is Charles Wilson. And I own the Rossi building in downtown Beaverton. And the address of that is 12484 Southwest Broadway. And it was funny, they were asking me if I'm in favor or opposed. I guess I was more concerned about the residents who live there. Because let's say the parking restrictions are now till 6, so a person comes home at 5, and then he can at least stay there and then leave in the morning, go to work, come home. But now he'd have to probably run out there and do something else with his car. You know, but now these fine people in the back here have said that there's parking permits, which is great, but I had heard that they were kind of all used up, but I guess now they're thinking about making more of those available for residences. So that probably would be okay. So this whole thing might work out. But, there's also gonna be a lot more residents down there, though, the 312 units that's opening up down the street, but I don't know if they would be walking way down towards the other side of Broadway, across Watson to park over there. So I guess I'm just making sure that there's enough of the permits available for residents. It's my ask, and I think that's already something that they're considering strongly as well, so. I guess I don't have to be here. Bye-bye. No. So, but I've been around for a while here on that street. I owned a restaurant there for 37 years. I've been through a lot of parking. Yes, but the whole thing, believe me, since, 45 years ago, the same thing was parking. Parking, we used to have a guy that would come around in a little three-wheel little cart thing and mark the tires. And then all the employees around would go out, wait for chalk off the tires, and it was kind of like a big cat and mouse game, which I'm sure we have a little bit of going on now as well. But since I don't own the restaurant there, I'm not kind of in touch as I was being there day in, day out. So I don't have that big of a stake in, let's say, when we were doing 1 hour parking and 15-minute zone. The 15-minute zone there that is there is probably because of the Beaverton substation was a little restaurant there. Also, it helps Dave Vanek.
Sir, I just have one question here. I'm wondering if we have you on the wrong card. Is this an extension for BHH,
Oh,
not for the main downtown? So, I didn't catch that at first because I thought you were doing, but right now, this is specific to the dead end.
okay. Well, got a little comment on the dead end. Yeah, we've been through that, but that dead end thing used to be, a lot of my employees used to park there all day because now without that being all day parking, that'll be cutting back on employee parking. Because there's employee parking is a big issue as well as the residential parking and I don't know. But anyway, so I would say that in a way, I think we have to go with more of the business customers. So I think that the 2 hour on that strip probably is much better, especially with those apartments opening, and it keeps people that can go there and then walk to shop to the new bakeries, the new restaurants, the new jewelry stores that are opening up in the area. So that one is good. And kind of already got my comment on the other one, right?
So so as a follow-up to that though, you're in, because I'm, sorry, I'm trying to phrase how to phrase the question here. Specific to the Beaverton Hillsdale section. There's no tenant parking because there's no overnight parking allowed. So they can only park during the day. So where do do you have tenants then?
Well, no, they wouldn't, they wouldn't park there.
No,
I think
but
that's the way it is.
just specific to this one, your tenants don't, you have enough parking for your tenants?
No, we don't have enough parking for our tenants. We don't have, our tenants would probably park on Broadway. If they're not home, they just park there for a few hours. Or else now, they'll probably have, some of them might have to get a permit for which would be, it's off, not where you're pointing, but the other way, on Broadway, like across from Pampa Pizza there.
Right. So, okay, I just,
But as far as this one goes, I think that it is, I'm just saying it's gonna be a big change. Although you figure that since they've constructed that, nobody's been using that parking for anything, so they're not in a typical situation where they always parked here and because they haven't always parked there because it's gonna be the same, so.
all right,
This is a time travel to make it to 2 hour parking like you're saying. I think it's a good thing.
we'll have to come back to that. Unfortunately, we kind of have these here, so it's a little cumbersome in the call. Is there questions of commission? Commissioner Bansky?
Yeah, a couple of questions about the businesses that will be using that dead end street in the evening, because like the property immediately to the north, It's got plenty of parking outside it. You know, look at the parking spaces there for that business, so they don't really need customers to park on that dead end street. So how many businesses are there that are open till 9 p.m. in the evenings? And why aren't they open on Sunday? Because this only applies from Monday to Saturday. So are there any businesses that are specifically closed on Sunday evenings, but open Monday to Friday and need? I'm just trying to get a feel of how much of this is to support businesses and how much is to penalise residents who want to park there in the evenings and overnight. So I'm trying to get a balance because there are trade-offs, and I need to be convinced that this is really helping businesses. For example, the employees or the people who work in the stores, they need somewhere to park. And if you're going to throw them out after 2 hours, that's not helping the businesses. So I'm just trying to get a better feel.
I don't know the specific hours of all the businesses in that area. I do want to note that there is ground floor retail included in that building, so there will be additional. So while there will be the residential units above, there is some retail space in that building as well. That will be looking for areas on the street for their customers and visitors to be able to park on the street. And we do know there's quite a bit of demand for parking in that area now, based on the parking occupancy data that was gathered. We know even into the evening hours, that parking occupancy on Stretch of Broadway is between 50 and 75% utilized until 10 p.m. And that is when we stop gathering data. So,
But not on Sunday, like the way I'm reading it, because there are no parking restrictions on Sunday. It says Monday through Saturday. So none of these businesses are open on Sunday evenings.
I'm sorry, but is this the time to ask them? Because he's still sitting there.
Yeah.
I think the question.
Oh, I'm
is
sorry.
for him.
I'm sorry. I thought you.
Okay,
Yeah.
I thought that you were making, I'm sorry, my apologies for not catching that because I thought you were.
I thought you
giving
finished.
Clarification from his. So thank you. Sir, so for that, any other questions of Mr. Wilson? All right, thank you. Thank you, sir. It looks like we have one more card. Thank you. And this one is for, all right, and then I don't have a name, sir. A name?
Mike Kristoff.
Okay, Mr. Kristoff, are you speaking on TC 863, the old Beaverton Hillsdale section, basically the dead end, or are you speaking about the entire length of Broadway?
Entire.
Okay, then we'll come back to you in a moment here. That's going to be TC 864. Bear with me then. Thank you. And there for now, then back to this one. So there are no other cards then for the Broadway. That in mind, then we will close the public hearing portion, begin commission deliberations. First was staff follow-up.
Yes, the question was about businesses opening on Sunday. It varies. Typically Sunday evenings, business slow down, and for that reason, Sunday we don't need restrictions. Also, most people will be not at their homes, so they can use their on-street parking. So it's finding that balance between business needs, residents needs. So to Saturday evening, it's a good compromise.
Yeah, because I thought, in the evenings at the weekend, people like to go out to the restaurants. And so I would have thought Friday, Saturday and Sunday would be a lot of demand for evening parking for people who want to go to the restaurants in that area. So the fact that Sunday is excluded, it kind of confused me a bit. All right, continue now.
I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but I have lived in many places in the United States, and almost to one Sunday, it's like free for all when it comes to parking. I'm not saying that Beaverton needs to follow suit in that, but in Portland, Harper, and even in places I lived in Chicago and Midwest, on Sunday, for some reason, there's just kind of we don't enforce parking on Sunday. And so I didn't find that odd, but to your point, you're right, there is often a lot more opportunity for people to participate in going out and being in restaurants and things like that on a Sunday, but typically this is not, it's something that's enforced, is what I've seen being the standard.
Thank you. Questions?
No.
Commissioner Moran? You're on.
Okay. Permissions. Or whatever they are called, permissions for the residents and the employees. I read that there were still so many available and so, but the point is though, that we set this, or we are setting this up to avoid the tenants to park there, right? So how do you, my follow-up question would be, are we gonna do it like this? The ones who should have gotten their parking in their house, they should get permissions, and the others, they might get permissions because they don't have any other place to park their car, including employees.
On the bottom line here, as is.
They said so.
Thank you.
You're right.
So much. So Molly Benefits, parking manager for the city, just to introduce myself. Right now, the on-street permit system is outdated, admittedly. However, we are actually in the process of not only adjusting the permit program, but adjusting the requirements around it. So what you just mentioned is something that we are considering in a situation where tenants don't have, or residents don't have access to any parking on site versus those that do. It's something that we definitely want to consider. The current system does not have a priority. Our permit application is first come, first served. But we are in the process of revising that to look at employee needs versus residential needs. Right now they're mixed. We're looking at it on who has access to on-site parking, who doesn't, as well as the locations, because our permit program was designed many, many years ago, and we've had a lot of development. Beaverton has grown a lot, so we really want to take a look at where those locations are, if they're meeting the needs of employees and residents, not necessarily together. So we admit that this proposal does not address all of the employee and residential permit needs, because this is not a permit request. This is a request to.
I totally understand, and by when will you have that figured out?
Can
We
we,
have to get work.
yeah, we just started, I just started analyzing and doing a study of cities of comparable size, last week.
Uh-huh.
I would imagine,
So it's actually a city code change.
Yeah.
So we have to go through the public hearing process. Our general process is anywhere from 4 to 6 months for a public hearing to take place
Okay, but
through
then
city council. So 4 to 6 months
4 to 6 months
from now.
from now, you will have it, gone through the whole process.
That is the goal.
Good.
Commissioner,
Thanks, Commissioner. Yeah, so Commissioner,
I'll only say on your topic, I'll only add on to your topic.
Yes.
My recollection from the reading is I believe there's only about 30 parking permits available, is that right?
At this time, but we have a renewal process, so we've actually changed the renewal process. It used to be that you came to the city hall, you got a pass, you hung it in your window, and you had to remember to come in and get a new one annually or quarterly for employees. We now have our reminders. It's been digitized, so now it's through a portal that will remind you to renew, or it will give you the option to let go of it. So we used to not be able to tell when somebody maybe moved away and they still have a permit. Now we can say, oh, somebody can say, oh, I moved away and I don't need this permit anymore. So they'll give it back to
A
the.
lot of people don't just give you parking permits back.
We don't, it's all license plate. No, it's license plate based now.
well, and to that point, since the program has been conceived in the 1990s, residents in the downtown area haven't had to renew their permit. more than annually. So we have people that could have been residents in downtown for years that renewed their permit in January, but then moved in February. And it never came up through the renewal process because they had to wait a year. So one of the changes that we're looking at making is making also residents renew their permits quarterly. So we make sure that we keep them in check and we don't
Yeah.
leave these permits around for months and months.
So they would go through a requalification process,
Exactly.
but they would have to prove that they're eligible.
Exactly.
I apologize, did not catch it. Am I right? Is there 30 parking payment permits left right now available? Is that-
There's about that out of 170 that are issued.
Yes, so given what's going on right now, given that the parking permit is antiquated and it's in the process of being revamped, it may take at least 4 months to get that done. Is there anything that the city can do to, I call it, freeze and not give any more permits that you have, available till this gets fixed? It just seems so unfair that you're giving something out that's gonna change here soon, and it's like, and we don't really know if you're giving it to the right people that should really be meritless getting it.
It is something that we can consider. That is actually not our decision. That is the city manager's decision.
Yeah, well, can someone pass that message along? I said before it gets worse, freeze it, it's under the process of being revamped, seems to be like a good idea. Because I would imagine it's a hot commodity, the inventory, and when the new building comes in, it will. Word hasn't gotten out, but I assure you, if people see this and they know about this, those will be gone overnight once people know about it. There's people sometimes don't know about it.
You don't disagree.
All right, so it's like,
So,
thank you.
Okay, yeah.
can I,
All right, thank you. Then back to Commissioner Randall to finish her.
yeah, just, so you have the power to recommend to the city manager, right? You're not powerless.
No, we're not powerless. I can't say, yes, we can do that tonight. That's not my purview.
Got it. No, thank you, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Commissioner
I
Bansky.
don't want to stray off the topic, but just a quick question about the permits. Since it's license plate recognition, what if somebody has a car that needs to go into a shop to get some repairs or service and to get a loaner car? How do they park that without getting a ticket?
They can update their plate through the portal with the temporary one and change it back when they.
So they can do it online very quickly.
Yeah, very quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Friedman?
In the past, there was I believe, a $35 fee for the permit. Is that still true?
There's a $30 fee, so it's $10 per month for employees only. Residential permits do not have a fee associated with it.
Thank you.
I have some additional
Commissioner Boyd?
questions. I see that the 15-minute parking is being eliminated. Maybe I missed it, but I don't understand why completely. It seems to be like if it's things are gonna grow, there's a lot of demand to pick up older packages, picking up and go. Seems like it's a good idea to have one.
So we're proposing, so that's actually on the next topic.
Thank you. I was gonna ask if that.
However, there is a 30-minute spot on WPH proposed for those short visits as an additional space, but I'm happy to address the other ones when we get to the.
Yes. And why 30 on this one then?
30 minutes is actually more enforceable. If it were 15 minutes, somebody would essentially have to sit there and watch the spot all the time
But what's your ultimate purpose of having the 30-minute? What do you want to accomplish?
to allow for those quick pickups that you just mentioned.
So that you really don't want quick pickups to be 30 minutes though, right? Also,
It's balancing what we can enforce and what allows people to have enough time to go in and grab their coffee or walk down the street and get their baked good and then leave. Or for somebody to show up for 5 minutes. You know, they can stay for 5 or they can stay for 30. It's still shorter than 2 hours. So the goal is to have those quick moments of, sometimes when DoorDash shows up, the meal's not ready. So we kind of want to look at the amount of time that somebody would spend in those spots. And sometimes it's very quick, and sometimes it's a little bit longer, but it's still considered a short stay.
I understand, and I'm in agreement with you, like for the DoorDash and that kind of a state, but I think in that situation, you're trying to accomplish something else. You're trying to accomplish a pick up and go type of order versus a quick 30-minute engagement that can happen. And I'm just concerned about this area, as we all know, is going to grow exponentially in the next few months. Next year, it will look very different. So what's coming? And parking is going to be a commodity, and especially when the retail goes in there and all these things happen. Those short-term park, they do work. I'm just letting you know, at Fred Meyer for the Starbucks, they have 15 minutes. People do, if they do work, they flip them. Just letting you know that they're not necessarily going to the park, but they work more than, in my opinion, what I've seen.
And 30-minute ones do work as well.
Again, what's the goal you're trying to
The
accomplish?
goal is to create turnover. Which is exactly what you just mentioned.
Commissioner Frieda?
How do we contemplate enforcing those times?
How do we contemplate enforcing the times on OBH, so the 2-hour or 30-minute? They would be incorporated in our current ambassadors routes that they follow now. We would just add the drive down OBH to accommodate that.
So if you're going to, is there a penalty? Let's say they have 2 hours, okay, because I used to be with the police department, and that's one of the things I did.
Yeah.
What's the penalty for
overstaying?
2 hour spot to be there free?
Yeah, it's initially first time, if it's your first time offense, it's a warning, and anything subsequent, it's at least $25, and then it escalates to $45 after 2 weeks. So
If you don't pay.
if you don't pay within 2 weeks, it's $45.
The parking fine, it's an overtime parking fine.
Right.
And the base fee is $45. There is an incentive to pay early. If you pay early within the first 2 weeks of receiving the citation, it goes down to $25. If you don't pay within those first 2 weeks, it's the base fee of $45. If it's not paid after 60 days, it is subject to collections by the court.
Second question, sorry. Mechanism, who is going to be doing the routes?
Currently, we have a vendor who has been on contract with us for just over for about 2 years. They're working on our downtown compliance pilot program. And they circulate a route of downtown that starts at approximately Center and Hall to the north, the 5th Street to the south, Lombard and Stott as your east and west barriers. They circulate Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And that is where all of this data comes from. It comes from their cameras on the vehicles that we have probably close to 3 million data points that we have collected over the last almost 2 years of this program. As of right now, this program is continuing, and we are working with the BPD on what the permanency will look like in the future. But we have full-time compliance program going on.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Moore?
I just wanted to confirm, and I think you mostly did reiterate. I've been on the commission for a while, so I've heard the enforcement and I've heard nothing has changed about your enforcement, except for what we're talking about is that there'd be a different amount of time that's being enforced. Is that correct?
So for this particular proposal, these are new restrictions on Old BH. So maintaining the 3:30 to 5:30 a.m. and adding the 2 hour or the 130-minute spot to help with that quick turnover. So it is something that we are enforcing throughout downtown. We have 2 hours all over downtown on Broadway. So it is adding those additional time limits to that, but it is not something that we are not already enforcing in other parts of downtown.
You are not enforcing?
So it's not something we are not already enforcing.
That's what
Sorry,
I'm
too
saying.
many negatives.
Right. No, that makes sense. You are, this is the.
We are currently enforcing that.
Yes, when I heard the fines and when everything is the way that it always was as far as enforcement. It's just a matter of, if you hadn't heard it repeatedly, I had. I just want to make sure nothing had changed regarding that. It's just a matter of, we're changing, perhaps, we're discussing changing the time limits. Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Moore. Commissioner Bansky?
Yeah, so on Broadway, there's no restriction for overnight parking, but there is on Old Broadway, as you mentioned, from 3:30 to 5 a.m. What's the rationale for that?
That's actually the standard across all city parking lots. So that's the standard on Chapman Avenue, that is the standard in both of our library lots, that is the standard on vets. Every single city parking lot has that same overnight parking restriction. So this would be, and this was already in place on Old BH, so we're not asking to change that. So that's, the idea is to not leave your vehicle on city property overnight.
I guess I'm confused. I thought this was a road. It's not. But, well, why don't you enforce it on roadway as well? I don't see why you're not enforcing it on Old Broadway, but you're on this little cul-de-sac. I would suggest scrapping it. It's a waste of parking space.
BH Highway and the Vets parking lot, and we used to have additional parking lots that we have buildings on it now. They were always posted no parking between 3:30 and 5:30 to prevent overnight parking. And sometimes people used to camp. Puritan Hillsdale Highway is considered one of those parking lots, not considered, on-street parking. For that reason, so nobody will just, park there, leave the car overnight, and then. So it also will help with enforcement. Let's say we need to tow that vehicle, it needs to be posted.
Yeah, I guess I don't understand. I mean, somebody can just go 100 yards down the road and park overnight on Broadway itself.
They can, but like I said, this is the city standards for parking lots. It's considered a parking lot, not one city parking.
Okay.
So that option is available on the street. If somebody want to park overnight on the street, they can. Now 9 p.m. to 8 a.m. they can park overnight.
Okay, I guess I didn't realize it was a parking lot. I thought it was a street.
Anything else? As a follow-up then, so I'm sorry, clarification that you're saying that this is not actually on-street parking, that this is considered a city-owned parking lot?
It functions that way because of the dead-end access. So because nobody can go through there, the way the street functions today and with the head-in parking, it functions more like a parking lot than our typical street.
Oh, okay, that would have been very helpful to have in here because the question is basically, as a follow-up to that, and I can park in there until 2:30 and then I can go out onto the street and I can park overnight and then I just have to move by 9 a.m., right?
Yes, I believe the confusion here because it hasn't been.
I'm sorry?
The confusion is because that parking lot has a street name on it. It used to be, that's where all Beaverton Hillsdale highways used to go.
Right.
And I think that's what's creating some of the confusion, but it is still parking.
Okay, that would be very helpful because then the follow-up question to that was the, there are two parts and it's kind of related, but I'm trying to keep it separate. The traffic study, as I understand, also applied into the parking lot here, or did not? The traffic study for time zones?
So if you're referring to Old BH Highway, no, because it was basically blocked off with our vehicles parked on it for the duration of the construction project.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. As a follow-up then to that, having the data from the other, from all of Broadway, if I understood the readings right, 25% of traffic stayed less than the 1 hour, and yet you only have one parking spot, which of course, the percentages don't break down correctly.
So we have some comps for you of areas in downtown that have large residential buildings and unrestricted parking next to them or near them. So this one is Westgate Drive. This map here in this info is Southwest Westgate, which is just up here to the north of us.
Right.
It has the Arc Central and it also has Lost of the Brown, which are condominiums. Both those buildings have their own on-site dedicated parking. But what we can see is from the 30 spaces, the average occupancy is 86%. And as Karen mentioned earlier today, 85 is kind of when we said, yeah, that parking is being fully used. And what 86% means is that there's less than 4 spots available at any given point. I mean, you can drive down Westgate any time of the day, and you can see that it's basically entirely full. And almost every time, or about a little bit about half of the time that we go down, it's full. So 54% of the time it's full or almost full. And we can't enforce that. We can't enforce overstays because there are no posted time limits on that street.
Okay, so, then as a follow-up to that, if the goal then of the first floor, first level business zone, seems like you're not gonna get turnover if everything in there is 2 hours except one. And I can't believe that all of the businesses in that street are gonna be 2-hour businesses on the first floor.
When we looked at all of our data, the average length of stay was somewhere on any given day, and we can look at fine details, and we can look at large swaths of data at the same time, and we're gonna get slightly different numbers. But the average length of stay is 1 hour and 30 minutes, approximately 1 hour and 25 minutes. On certain days, it might be 2 hours and 5 minutes. But the average length of stay can be accommodated within 2 hours. Somebody can pull into a 2-hour spot and stay for 5 minutes. Absolutely. So having a limit of 2 hours accommodated over 75% of our stays and allows people to stay an hour and a half, 2 hours. If we shorten that or lengthen that, then we're not meeting what our standard is showing us, what our data is showing us. Our data is showing us people stay between an hour and 2 hours on average. So we're gonna have those short stays, and we're gonna have those people that need to find accommodations for a longer stay. But 75% of our folks visiting the area are staying in that approximately 2-hour timeframe.
And then final question. Thank you for that. Final question then is, as a parking lot, then this isn't allowable for turning the parking spaces into tables. Is that true? Can I do the whatever it is where I make the parking go away and put in my tables for my restaurant?
Businesses can have tables on sidewalks if the sidewalk is wide enough to allow this. And they are allowed to have what they call speed seats, similar to what we have on First, that if you have it in front of your business. This parking lot does not have any businesses facing park. It's all residential along that side. The commercial part is along the property.
Okay. All right, thank you. Other questions? All right, any deliberation comments? Motions, everything is up to. All right, I'll start with one comment. I wish this was taken at a more holistic level, because you're breaking these up, and I guess now that you're saying it's a parking lot helps because it's very confusing when you try to go through. The other part was to Commissioner Moore's point. Enforced parking starts at 1 o'clock now on Sundays in parts of Portland, especially Northwest. They open that up now at 1 o'clock. Different areas of the city are open, but they're now enforcing parking from 1 to 7 on Sundays as well. And also, there seems to be a mixed use there. You go and there's a mix of parking. There's 5-hour spots, there's 3-hour spots, 2s, 1 30-minute. In the last hearing that we had about a particular business down the street on Broadway, that person wanted to take all 14 parking spaces that had been unemployed for, and I wanted, but it's on a different moments. Sorry about this. The business wanted all 14 spots to be 2 hours because they needed the parking. And yet we heard from a business owner on the phone that there was no place for their business. They couldn't get anybody in. I just wish there was a better often than just the one parking spot in some sort of mixed balance. So I'm hoping that this doesn't come back later and we have other issues. Because the gentleman was pretty upset that they wanted all 14 spots to be 2 hours, and that was the recommendation. And the gentleman said nobody could get to his spot, which was, in my opinion, definitely a 15-minute option. So I guess that's
not,
what I've got. Sorry, yes, that's all I had. So
but this has nothing to do with this one.
no, it does in the sense of there is only one 30-minute spot.
In this one.
And this one, and 33 others, right? It's treated completely different. It's handled entirely different. And the cohesion of that, but you have a one space that you're trying to avoid those in a certain way. If it's the city code across, then it seems like there should be something else because the permits and the residents and the other, if I'm a resident down the street at a different apartment complex, I don't get to have a permit, but these people do, right?
Yeah,
If I'm in this spot, I don't get one because there's a spot somewhere. So
One of the things is, here, could there be 2 30-minute spots, for example, right? I mean,
well, that was my only point. It seems like we've done the same thing as the other recommendation with the other business, right? Which was all or nothing, right? This makes it uniform. I don't know any other city that says, all the spots are 2 hour everywhere. And so it just, I'm hoping, it's just a comment that I hope this doesn't come back as another one down the road and say, well, now we need to change it again. Because how many times have we heard from Broadway, not to take it on this side, but I think down the street, where they put in the tables in front of their business. So,
yeah, and let me
that's
also,
my only comment. So,
yeah, I'm gonna follow right. Oh, was it this one?
no, I will recognize Commissioner Miranda to follow up on.
Okay, so when you say data shows that the average is 1.5, right, hours. That's the data of all the parking, 1.5 hours. It doesn't mean that people obviously are like this, right? But when, as Commissioner Bouvardia already said, anyway, then what you want is turnaround. Then turnaround doesn't go with 2 hours everywhere. And I mean, 30 minutes, I understand. Don't get me wrong there. 30 minutes or 15 minutes, 30 minutes is okay. But then 30 minutes and that one, I'm just talking about I don't even want to talk about the other part because with all of this together, Rachel, anyway, 30 minutes, I would say 30 minutes here and then, let's see how this goes, but I'm pretty sure we will see this again. Because there's no way with 2 hours it works to have a turnaround. You will have people sitting there for an hour and a half maybe, but what you want is turnaround. Right? You don't want them there an hour and a half. You want them there an hour sometimes.
That's a discussion point, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, if you were looking at.
I'm looking at them, I'm looking. Okay, sorry.
No, that's all right. Can you look at?
I would agree with you, Commissioners, but I would rather be told that this is a solution for what we have based on the data that we have right now. But once Modera goes in and it is fully occupied and the mixed-use building is, I do believe that the city should look at the needs again and run new data in. I do believe the needs will change, reflected on what is there at that time. I'm being realistic that this is not a permanent solution. I'm seeing it as this could be a solution for right now, but I would ask that the data keep coming, be considering it to find the good and the right solution, because you're forecasting, and I understand that's part of what you need to do, is try to forecast what it is. But it also, you have to have some flexibility, right, to see what's gonna really happen and use what really will happen. There's gonna be a lot of changes in the next year.
Commissioner Moore?
My point exactly. We are in what's called growing pains. And we're getting a lot of pain here because there's a flexibility that has to happen as things grow, as we expand. And what shows up as data and what shows up in, the more technology we have to analyze things, the more solutions we come up with that are for that season only. And we repeatedly see that lack of continuity causes people to be confused and or angered, which means they're coming back to talk to us about fix it. How do we fix it? And one, because something works on one street doesn't mean it's ideal for the other street. And people don't want to hear that, especially when we had one person who came to a meeting and wasn't able to actually present. I don't know if you remember, there was a guy who said he had to walk a lady over to go move her car at 3 a.m. so he could go somewhere else. And yes, and I don't think that we're want to impact people's quality of life in that manner, but I do recognize that it's necessary to, in some ways, encourage the use of the parking that is available. And we're not all gonna get on the Jetsons and have no cars, flying cars or whatever they're doing, or a walking community overnight. But that's what seems to be the way that we're approaching this whole area, as though people aren't going to have cars, or we're not gonna need as many cars. And it's, what's my favorite word here in Oregon? I'm not certain that it's sustainable. And so that's the part that I wanted to hear more about, and it's perplexing because I don't think we really have a solution that's viable for a long term.
Okay, thank you. Comments, motions, anything?
What's one more comment?
Commissioner Miranda?
Your data, it's mostly the data of the cars with the cameras, right? So you might want to consider also other data from the businesses, right? Because I don't know, or yes.
Yeah, Mr. Kasha.
Let's say we leave the parking lot without 2 hours parking, okay? And you have all these residents coming in. Do you think there will be turnover?
No, yeah.
So that's what we're gonna, look at it from that side. And here we're arguing 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 2 hours. In previous studies, I don't know if maybe Chairman Conley was around when they did the first parking study. Actually, it showed the average stay was close to 2 hours. It hasn't changed from 2007. So this tells you the person in the downtown coming to do business, most of them are staying 2 hours or less. Sometimes we hear one person or one business that they're looking for their own benefit only. That's where we get in trouble, where we're gonna accommodate that one person and it will mess the whole system as a system. We have many streets in downtown Beaverton when we did the first parking study that we converted to 2 hours. If you look at First Street, Second Street, the side street on it, it's all 2 hours. And the turnover is happening all the time. Another thing, when we start doing a lot of 15 and 30 minutes, and you reduce the parking stalls that are typically people need 2 hours for, then they start violating those 30 minutes and 15 minutes. And people will get angry because they get ticketed. So always, parking philosophy is you base your parking time based on the average stay. And that will help actually turnover. Yes, it is 2 hours. Somebody moves out, somebody on a 5 minute stay, they can park in that spot. It doesn't change the dynamic, regardless what he's offering.
Additionally, we know that old BHH itself has not been operational under construction, which is why we looked at all of our large multifamily units in the downtown area where there is some unrestricted parking and some 2-hour parking. And it's in your packet, there was some memos. Our data shows, as Casey presented on the screen, that in the areas where there was 2-hour parking, there was turnover. As soon as those 2 hours ended in the evening, the street fills up. And it fills up to anywhere from 80 to 100% capacity, and then it comes back down during the restriction hours. And the streets that have no regulation on them, like this street on Westgate, it stays full all the time. So what we are trying to do is look at a very, very restricted area, a very finite resource, 124 parking spaces across Broadway, and look at all of the businesses and think about the up to 500 residents that could be living in 312 units and what that impact is when you're bordered by Canyon and Farmington. Broadway is very much an important part of our downtown as a whole, but it operates very differently because of its physical boundaries. And we're trying to be very mindful of the needs of these folks that have been here for 45 years and those that are coming in, and how do we balance that? And it is a little bit of a what's yet to come because of the development in Old Town, the development in Beaverton Central. There's a little bit more room to grow there, a little bit more room for people to exist than we have on Broadway. And that is why we are talking about Broadway and Old BHH today and not coming to you with, here's our downtown plan. But as John said, the data has shown 2 hours is kind of that sweet spot.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I would like Commissioner Bansky, and then I'd like to.
Okay, looking into the future, are there any plans to install EV charging stations in any of these parking spots? I mean, if somebody's going to a restaurant for 2 hours, a good opportunity to top up there.
There's always that possibility. We have learned from a lot of our EV charging constituents, if you will, companies. They like the head-in spots instead of parallel spots in terms of how the machines operate and plug in. Running conduit and all of those things is costly, as well as the majority of people charge at home. And these vehicles have gotten so advanced that they can run on a charge for days, depending on how many, depending on the vehicle and depending on how much you drive it. And so public chargers are not as in demand as at-home chargers. But that doesn't mean that if we find an area that we've had a number of requests for them, that we wouldn't consider it. We work with our sustainability team.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. As Molly noted, the sustainability team is looking into this. We have the climate action plan update that's happening right now, as well as the transportation system plan update. Both of those plans are looking citywide at the need for on-street parking and charging and how that could be accommodated. So just want to make that note that that's ongoing as part of another effort and not related to the on-street parking management that Casey and Molly are asking.
Okay,
Thank you. I have a point of order, Mr. Cascio or Ms. Hall. What would you need to do to call signage to basically say this is not street parking, this is city, some sort of city parking lot related, off-street, non-street? What do I need to do to say I want a sign that says?
Actually, the parking lot has a sign on it, says public parking.
Oh, it does, where? Oh, that's what the green sign is over there. That makes no, okay, thank you. Then, I would like to make a motion. I would like to make a motion then that we approve as written, TC 863 with the extension though of, a clear sign at the, move the sign somewhere so that it's very clear that public parking, because the public parking is right next to the sign that says no parking at night. It completely confused me. It makes no sense.
I don't think you need to add this to the motion because I can do it under my authority as the city traffic engineer. And there is a sign, and now with the reconstruction, that sign will be relocated. But it's just, you tell us you need the sign there and that's what we feel.
Okay,
What we do, because if we've been added to the motion, then we have to change the final of the vote. And then
All right.
it will take long.
motion made then. So next point is either second or a different motion. All right, so motion made by Chair Conway to approve as written, seconded by Commissioner Miranda. Final discussion? All those in favor then roll call, Commissioner Miranda? Aye. Commissioner Moore? Oh, I meant the wrong talk on it, Commissioner. Reba? Oh, thank you. Commissioner Moore?
Aye.
Commissioner Bobadilla? Commissioner Bansky?
Aye.
Vice Chair McLean? Or, sorry, Chair Conway, aye. So, okay, that motion passes then, 6-0, thank you. Okay, next up then, we will move to, PC 864. And before we begin that part, I want to make one clarification on here. Mr. Wilson, do you need to make any other additional comments other than what you've already made? Regarding, do you plan to? Not, sir, not at this time. Do you plan to?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I need to make sure that that is on here for this before we get started. Make sure on that. And then, Mr. Christoph, you still plan to speak, correct?
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right, with that in mind, then let us begin the public hearing portion of FCC 864. Begin with staff comments. Ms. Paul.
PC 864, parking time limit revisions on Southwest Broadway. As shown on the map here this evening, we are asking Traffic Commission to recommend changes to the parking time restrictions on Southwest Broadway from Cedar Hills Boulevard to Lombard Avenue. So the section shown there in green. So today, parking restrictions on Broadway are a mix of 15-minute spots, so two 15-minute spots located between Hall and Watson, some 1-hour spots on the south side of Broadway, and that same block, and then on both the north and south side of Broadway to the east of Hall Boulevard. The remainder of the parking on Broadway is under a 2-hour restriction. And that is between the hours of 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. on Saturday. So for many of the reasons that we just covered earlier, including the data that our parking team shared in regards to current occupancy stays on Broadway, we are asking Traffic Commission to revise those hours to 2 hours for the entire street of Broadway, with the exception of the existing 15-minute spaces, which will become 30-minute spaces. And we do propose to add one additional 30-minute space on the north side of Broadway at the corner of East. We are also asking the commission to revise the hours that the time restrictions are in place to 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday. As we mentioned earlier, some of the blocks on Broadway are already approaching 85% occupancy during the evening hours. We expect this to increase, and we are looking to proactively manage to support businesses while encouraging our private residents who have access to on-site parking to utilize that. Similar to the last issue, the applicable criteria for this is 1D, accommodating the parking needs of residents and businesses in a safe and equitable fashion. That concludes staff comments. The 4 parking staff are here and available to answer questions on this issue as well.
Thank you. We'll begin with public hearing portion and start with again cards and more they received. All right, Mr. Wilson, now we're ready. Okay.
I guess I get to speak twice, so that's good. in a way. Wait, but I did have what you brought up about the chargers, I don't know if anybody here knows, but it would be interesting to know if there's any car charger for that new parking structure that's put up. Does anybody know? Okay. So I think yeah, in fact, I think it's gonna be fine that we're all 2 hour now. Because I'll be honest with you, I think that the 1 hour on that one side I was kind of the one that was against the 2 hour everywhere, just from what somebody said, the turnover. And because it doesn't encourage turnover, they got everything 2 hour. But I can see the point that everybody's saying that you want people to come, go to a restaurant and go into the other shops, look around, and enjoy the place. So I think I'm all for that. And I think now, and the other question I had, and I don't know if anybody else has anything, but you know, you have 175 parking permits for employees and residents. But I was wondering how many parking spots are associated with those permits? Is it 175, one for each spot? Or is it a lot less, like 100 spots, but 175 permits? I think that would be an interesting thing to know. Does anybody know?
We'll find out. Okay. Are there anything else?
And then I guess aside from that, I think everybody's about as happy as we can be, you know. So it's just parking has always been an issue, and I know you guys are trying. So thank you so much.
All right. So, Mr. Wilson, one follow-up here to make sure it's clarification. You, is the building owner have resident tenants and business tenants, one, the other, or both?
Both.
Okay, and then of that total, you do not know how many of those have permits? Because where do your tenants and employees park?
Well, I think they just, I'm not sure they know about, know about the permit thing. Mike here is gonna talk about one lady in particular that has to walk them. So he'll tell you what, I don't really know, but I will definitely, we have a couple units coming open. I will try to tell them that there are these permits and that they should go get one.
Okay, very good. Other questions? All right, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, next up then, Mr. Christoph. I'm not sure if you were here earlier, but there's a green sheet on here, so if you please sit on the right-hand side.
Right.
Oh, there we go. The other, my other,
That mic is.
the one with the green light on.
Yep.
Perfect, thank you.
That would be left.
Well, I meant you're right.
Okay.
Trying to help you out. So if you can check the questions on there, sir. You're speaking for yourself, others, or name and address for the record.
Okay, full name Michael Kristoff. I'm a resident, 12440 Southwest Broadway Street, apartment 4. I go a little bit, I don't know, I'm kind of in between. I have some questions. And I just want to, basically, thank you for remembering. I was that individual that had, you impressed, remember? I'm not sure if I'm for or against because, see, I'm having to walk the gal at way late hour, 2 a.m. to go to have her car moved all the way over by the food courts and everything. And I'm sorry, I don't even like walking there at night, back and forth, having to move the cars, having to do this and that. Because I've been accosted 4 times having to do this. Because especially right down, when you go down Broadway and then across the street, through that light intersection, that's what a lot of homeless pretty much hangs out. It's a pretty bad area, so I'm having to walk her. And like I said, I've been accosted 4 times, so now I carry bear spray and I'm ready for it. But bottom line is what is these permits entailing? I mean, because she's still having to move her cars and she's gotten a couple of tickets and so maybe I'm confused.
So as a clarification, sir, if I may, interrupt you here, you are a resident of an apartment on Broadway.
Yeah, right there about Broadway Saloon.
And just because not everybody was familiar with
Oh,
the other testimony then, which, yes, Commissioner Moore was very good at that, and I do recall your discussion of that. The lady that you helped also lives in that same complex.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, neither one of you though utilize the permit parking.
See, I don't. I went electric and got electric bike.
Okay, and then, but she does not either, correct?
Yeah, she has her car.
But she does not have a permit, or you have off-street parking available?
No, she can't park by her apartment. We're always having to move it. So I, walk her.
But do you have on-street park, do you have an off-street parking option, or do you have to park on the street only? That's your only option?
Yeah, the only option is not.
Okay, so that, all right, so you have to park on the street, but you don't get a permit.
She hasn't, I don't believe she has one.
Okay,
To
very
be
good.
honest with you, I never even asked her. I just volunteered to walk her down.
All right, that in mind then, okay.
Okay.
So you're concerned then about that she has to move her
Oh, yeah.
car,
I
but
mean,
she might be able to get a permit.
okay.
Is that what, is
So
that?
what does that permit entail? I mean, can she?
Well, we can go into that, I think, later on. What I'm trying to understand here for your testimony, though, is that you're having to help someone move their car
Yeah.
because she either cannot get or does not know about the permit process, correct?
I would say that's pretty
That's-
spot on.
That's perfect, because then we will get somebody to help educate the community on how this is going to work.
Okay, yeah, that'd be good.
Okay, good. Now, is there any other comment you'd like to make about the rest of that? Because you, either way, you're fine with the 2 hour.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay,
You
very good.
know, not a big deal. It's gonna be interesting once that apartment complex, so.
Is there a question of Commissioner? Commissioner, sorry, there is.
Where exactly is your friend parking?
She has to go over to buy the food carts.
No, where is she parking? When, at Broadway Street?
Yes, sporadic, whatever spot she can get after the hours. So a lot of times she's having to stay away from her place because it says you can't park there till 9. And then,
So the Broadway Street doesn't have a overnight limitation.
So one clarification from Ms. Hall.
Yeah, I was just gonna offer that, staff are prepared to follow up, and to make sure that we get this sorted out. It sounds like there might be some confusion, and then also, making sure we get them connected to the, permits. So,
yeah,
Perfect.
staff is prepared to do that.
yeah, she's real quiet, timid, so she doesn't really. Assert herself, you know.
So thank you for bringing that up.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Other questions? All
I
right,
said, thank you for helping her.
yeah, thank you, and
Thank you.
thank you for sharing that today, so that helps.
Really, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Very good. All right, I have no other cards. There are no other comments with that portion. We will close the public hearing portion of this, and then do a follow-up with staff. Are there any other follow-up comments? Okay, thank you. With that, then, we'll close the public hearing portion and begin deliberations by the commission. Is there anyone? Okay, I'll recognize Commissioner Moran.
So there is no night. I don't know what to look at.
So
There is no night, thing.
overnight parking is allowed on Broadway. So what we're gonna do, like mine, I'm gonna do the follow up with them and really kind of dig into those details and see where the miscommunication is happening. So
I just wonder why there is not,
oh, why there's not?
Yeah.
Uh,
and why did
Defer.
you suggest it?
It's like every other street in the downtown.
Oh,
Overnight is allowed. Time limits apply currently between 7 AM and 6 PM.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Was a follow-up then to that, not sure where, if the concern of blocking, and maybe it's by definition that it's off-street parking. But if the concern is that you don't want people to park in the off-street parking because you're gonna, they get free parking, what's to prevent them from going on the street, and what's the mechanism, future plan? Because if I get home at 9 o'clock, I could park, everybody, all my friends get home at 9 o'clock, we're gonna park overnight in the street. Is that an issue, or is that a?
It's always an issue, in terms of finding that balance. However, the reason that we proposed 9 o'clock was we actually did have a meeting with the Broadway community in April and talked to them about all of these concepts that were presented to you all today. And they were in favor of the 9 o'clock because that's when their business is closed. So if business is closed at 9 and somebody from the apartments wants to park there until the next morning, they're sharing a resource. And that's the goal here, is to find this balance. Because the majority of on-site or off-street parking in multifamily residential in downtown is an extra cost, we are always going to find people who are not willing to pay that cost. And so they are sharing the resource with the businesses down the street or beneath the residential. The goal is to utilize the parking, for everyone as much as possible. There's no perfect solution. Unfortunately, Casey and I, and John and Kara, are in a very tough position of finding the right balance. And you all get to experience that as well. So, there's not enough parking on the streets to accommodate all of the potential vehicles of just the Madera. So finding that balance of helping the folks who don't have on-site parking and they can utilize the street overnight, but the businesses can use it during the day. And then the permits, you add the permits on top of that as another layer to allow those folks who need to be there longer, to be there longer.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Bansky.
Yeah, if the businesses are open till 9 p.m., then parking restriction should be until 11 p.m. Because somebody could come home at 7 o'clock, a resident, and park it there until the next morning. They'll stay for the 2 hours legally, and then they stay overnight, like they're allowed to. So there's no guarantee by saying from 8 till 9 that the residents won't come at 7 o'clock and take those spaces anyway.
You're absolutely correct. That is also always a possibility. The current restrictions ending at 6 p.m. means that can happen starting at 4.
Yeah.
So our data, going back to the data we've collected, shows that there is a dramatic decrease in demand as we get towards that 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m. hour. Our data collection stops at 10 p.m. That's when we let our folks go home and get a good night's sleep. So we are trying to again, that balance. There's not going to be a perfect solution. If our residents come home and don't park on site and start doing that at 4 p.m., then all of these new restaurants that are coming in or have come in that are open until 9 p.m., none of their customers, none of their employees have the option of parking on Broadway because it's been taken up by residents. So we're 7 p.m., on average, and again, we're talking averages, everybody works different hours, but on average, the majority of people come home between 5 and 6, which means the parking restrictions would still be in place for those businesses to continue to operate until 9 p.m. and hopefully allow for some availability on the street. Our study of the surrounding multifamily has shown us that as soon as those restrictions end, those spots fill up really quickly. So we're trying to help the new businesses coming in, the potential for the retail in the Madera. We have a business, a very long-standing business that's expanding its hours to 9 p.m. We have at least, so somebody asked the question earlier about how many businesses are open till 9 p.m. We have at least 5 restaurants within this small stretch of Broadway operating until at least 9 p.m. And I think it's more than 5. I just to think of, you know, this very small area that has a very high demand.
Yeah, and the reason I asked about the businesses before, because if there's a sports bar, for example, some people may want to stay longer than 2 hours because there's a football game on or something. They may want to be there all afternoon or something, so that business would be hurt by, you know, with 2 hour limit. That's the only reason I asked about what kind of businesses are there. And I don't know, is 2 hours reasonable stay for a restaurant? Probably is, right?
Any question, Commissioner Overdeer?
I don't necessarily have a question, and he's contributing something. We have a lot of problems that are coming with our parking. There's a lot of housing that is gonna be built, but also our state made a decision that we got rid of mandatory parking for when housing is being built. So-called to make affordable housing better. It's not necessarily a solution. It's concerning me because the problem is being shifted to the cities now. It is a problem that we are then now having to resolve without having tools. Which is a kind of a fearful thing. It really is. At least before we require some parking for these buildings to provide. I may find it silly when I hear things that there's actually a parking building that the apartment complex built, but is not allowing its residents to park there unless they pay an extra fee. Also, basically now again shifting that problem to the city and for us to continue to solve it. It's hard because we're running out of solutions. We really are. And I think it's important to talk about it and for our city to know also, because we have our hands tied a lot of the times on how to provide that solution, because the little power and tools we have have been taken away from us. I'm sorry you're the one that had to hear about that, but I think it's important for us to keep talking.
I appreciate that because that is something that Casey and I deal with on a daily basis.
Thank you. One other question, or actually I had 3, is my visit there, the observation, is there consideration for striping? Because I noticed that was, there were 4 cars in a spot that I could have managed 7. They depart, they're gigantic vehicles and the cameras don't work out on it. I mean, it's too complicated. I know we've had this discussion before, but when I saw that, I have photos.
That evidence stop.
So you're asking if we could stripe?
Does the plan include striping in here because you somehow identified 124 parking spaces?
You know, parking tick marks could work with you and sometimes it works against you.
I totally,
We like to keep them around 22 feet so people can get in and out without hitting the car other than or behind them. Sometimes these days, all people are driving these big trucks, they don't fit in that spot. So either they take 2 spots and nothing you can do about it, it's the size of the truck. But sometimes without the marking, you may be able to squeeze more. Sometimes drivers tend to park closer.
Right.
It all depends on the situation you're in. It's not perfect every time you see it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
all right.
There was studies done in, with or without tick marks. It averaged almost the same.
Okay, I was curious because in every off-street parking lot in the parking structures in the library, City Hall, they're very clearly demarked parking spaces. So I know that this is my storage capacity, right? The street, it becomes a free-for-all, whereas if you're already doing it, at least put a number on it so you can say this is the number. I was just curious if you were going in that direction or if that had been considered.
We currently have 2 parks.
But what you're talking about is parking lots. Parking lots is easy to do because you define the side limits of the vehicle. If it sticks out and they drive by, it's okay. So that's why you could get the exact number of parked vehicle. But on the street, it's just open, lengthwise. So there's that flexibility if the current vehicle is a little bit longer that you could put with it.
Okay, I didn't see it in the, and maybe we should have asked for the minutes from that meeting. I didn't see whether businesses cared about, well, you know, I could get 5 or 3, I guess. So,
I can tell you that that was not a hot topic of conversation. It was more about the time limits and whether or not their businesses and
Okay.
properties could be accommodated. We also have to keep in mind fire hydrants and driveways and distances from those to allow for clearance and sight. So there's the length of the street, like as Dr. said, 20 to 22 feet. We do have a few downtown that are a little bit bigger. And some of that is to create those proper distances between things, to make sure you're far enough away from a fire hydrant, but not too close to the driveway. Can't really fit 3 there, so if we put 2 larger ones, do we put, you know, 3 really small ones? So as John said, it's not there's no perfect solution when you're going parallel. We do have tick marks on Broadway right now, and that's where that 124 number came from. Could we fit more? Maybe, if people park properly. If they decide to park between 2 spaces, then we've got 123.
okay, a follow-up then, okay, so next question then, thank you for that. You're not trying to do, like you said, one giant, let's get all this done in one fell swoop. The tables in front of a business, if we're already admitting that we have a crunch time, is that program going to continue, or are you going to ban it on the street, or has there been any discussion on that?
At this time, the program will continue.
Okay, thank you. And then the last one, I guess, would be, when I went through up and down the whole street, there are several buildings between east and west. It doesn't matter. There were several buildings that looked like they were empty at this time. So I did not anticipate that this was full, and the businesses that are going on. But sorry, whatever you call them, the first level thing. Where are the employees going to park if we are already worried about 2 hours to get somebody doing it? Where are the employees parking now? And where are the additional ones going to go? Because a lot of those businesses are not open at all.
So we, like I mentioned earlier, we know that this isn't a perfect employee solution, and the goal right now is to get started on our permit program to look for better employee options. However, we have, having talked to the businesses, we have employees that we have actually employers who have worked with other private businesses who have larger parking lots, even on the other side of Canyon or up here at Beaverton Central, where they're sharing their parking. So the city has had a shared parking program in their development code for years and years. And that is an agreement between 2 private entities to agree to share their parking with each other. And that's something that the city encourages. We can help kind of connect folks, but we don't actually get to get involved in the private decision that they make with their private property.
Yeah.
We have the public garage up here. We have folks that park at the 30 Washington lot near the library, or the farmer's market lot, whatever you call it. And we have, we've heard from some very creative solutions from our businesses. We also have the permits down the street. So that there was a question about numbers of permits, numbers of spaces. There are 175 permits currently available. That's residential employee combined, because that's how our on-street permit program currently works. There are actually approximately 120 permit spaces throughout our downtown. We have turnover. Not everybody's using them on the same days, not everybody's using them at the same time. So we can have more permits out there than we have spaces available. Along Broadway, along between Cedar Hills and Watson, that stretch that sits along the tracks is, if everybody's parking properly, 42 spaces, and all of those allow for 2-hour or permit. So of those 120 spaces that have permit allowance, which allows you to park there for however long you need to, 42 of them are on Broadway.
42 of the 124. Okay.
Allowed, and the ones that are permit, just to be clear, are 2-hour or permit.
Okay.
So if you don't have a permit, you can still park there, so it's being shared.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That was good clarification. Is there, Commissioner Bianski and then,
Talking about overnight permits, could you issue overnight permits to those spaces on Old BH Highway? Because there's being wasted space overnight. I mean, if you issue, that's 30 cars that could be parked there overnight, it would relieve some of the congestion in other places.
As part of our permit study, we
Yeah.
will be looking at all.
Just
of
that,
our
just
city
for
parks.
overnight when there's no businesses open.
I was just going to give a suggestion also about the parking permit and maybe we can be allowed to give you, share some pointers. As you guys have that program involved, but I would be concerned of a business getting too many individual employee parkings, if that makes sense. That to me is like a waste of a very limited resource, and there has to be a better plan of so many. And also if a building has parking and there's a multi-use, they better provide parking for those employees. Just suggestions.
Yeah, as I'm
There
going,
needs to be a burden also back on them, on the building there. Somehow we need to figure out some solutions. I love this conversation. I know it's probably not perfect, but it needs to be talked about. So hopefully you guys can come up with, obviously, a better solution.
yeah, as I'm going through and doing a study of other cities, so, our neighbor city of Portland, they actually limit the amount of employee permits that they'll issue based on FTE. So depending on where you are in the district, if you're northwest or if you're downtown, it's limited to sometimes 0.7 or sometimes 0.5 of your total employees. And then, as Molly mentioned earlier, when we're trying to prioritize our residential permits, we can also require them to do what's called an off-street parking declaration, where we make them declare any available or unavailable off-street parking to them, so that we can prioritize giving those that don't have any.
These are all concepts,
Yeah.
right? They're not part of an official proposal.
No, we understand. And we're all having a conversation.
Yeah.
Understood. And that's why we're just chiming and giving you suggestions.
Yeah, no, and we appreciate that. And there are a number of different ways we can approach overnight parking. It's really important to us to look at the separation of employee and residential permit. That's one of the struggles that we think this area has, as well as just kind of the on-street permit program in general. Is what we're trying to do is not only find the right level of use of a very finite resource, and that's how we view parking as a resource. And employees have different needs and they have different locations that they need those things in different hours. And in many cases, employee and residential can overlap in the sense that employees are there during the day, residents come in at night, and how do we kind of accommodate that? But I fully agree with you that if there is on-site parking that can take some of that pressure off of our on-street system, that we want to try to make sure that that is also being used to its best and highest use.
Well, it's not just a pressure, I think it's a pressure on our city and our communities too, that needs to be acknowledged and needs to be used. I also think that in the future will be nice for us as our city is evolving, develop, and growing, doing things. We need to incentivize the businesses love incentives. If they do, what can they get in return but pro quo for them to provide parking, for them to consider parking when they're building these multi-use apartments, when they're building these townhomes, all these things that we want and we need. But if you incentivize them, they will build it. They will provide it.
I think this would be a good, I will make one comment about, I think it would have been helpful to have a workshop discussion about that before, because we're discussing this now, and I think if there are no other comments for staff, specific questions, then we'll close the public hearing portion. I appreciate the conversation for that, but I think that's a dialogue that really meant in a workshop environment, because there's a lot of back and forth looking that would be good. That being said, then we begin commission deliberations or entertain motion. Commissioner Fiedler,
Make a motion,
to approve, yes, please.
to move on to discussion. You can make a motion for that.
No, that's what I'm saying. We just were done. We closed the public hearing portion. So now we're into commission deliberations. Okay, deliberations. You can discuss between ourselves, or someone can make a motion. If the motion's made, then we wait for a second. If there's no second, motion dies, and then we can.
Okay, sorry.
No.
So I would make a motion to accept this, right?
You are making a formal motion?
Yeah.
All right, Commissioner Miranda made a motion to approve as written TCA 6. Second by Commissioner Bobadilla. Okay, that being said, let's discuss that. Final discussion on that?
I think that's one point.
Okay, that is wonderful.
Thank you. It was not even about order. Just a comment, because I was hoping we have a little bit of discussion. I was talking to Commissioner Bobadilla earlier about the fact that having worked in a retail environment for many years, I loved what I did for work, but I didn't even go to work in that area for years because I had envisioned sideways brain attacking me and having to go park very, very far away and possibly barely get to work, get up, shuttle, go somewhere else to go to work. And when you said make emotion, I was hearing emotion. I get very emotional about the fact that, and that's why I was connected with what had gone on with the other gentleman before. Emotionally, that is draining to have to go through so much just to get where you're going, just to go do what you're supposed to do for work. And I just feel that we need a solution for people who are working, and it's not more paperwork or go park over here. And I'm glad that there's a solution that they can put a vehicle somewhere, but there's got to be a better way to live. And I'll just leave it there because I'm just personally vested in those poor people.
Final discussion, then I will make one comment about that since the motion was made towards that. And that is, I will abide by my own discussion that this is not written in stone and it'll come back because this is not a solution at all. And I'm not sure I agree with it, but in the interest of moving this forward, I'd reluctantly consider that. Any other final discussion?
I feel I don't have a choice. I feel.
I feel, yes, I kind of feel that. Thank you. Excellent point. Any other final?
Yes,
Yeah.
I've said this before, I will say it again. It is not put before us to find the solution. We are here to either approve or deny or decline to approve what is set before us. And the idea of a workshop to work through solutions and to come to a consensus very favorable for many of these situations.
Excellent. Right. No other final comments, then we'll take a roll. Begin, Commissioner Rand.
Aye.
Commissioner Friedman.
Aye.
Commissioner Moore.
Aye.
Commissioner Bobadilla.
Aye.
Commissioner Bansky.
Aye.
Vice Chair, Chair Collins. Aye. Motion passes 6-0, and so thank you everyone for that part. Hearing portions are done. Next up, we have a presentation, traffic calming update again. That's all. And before we do, while you're setting up, thank you. Coming out and being our Molly and your team.
Thanks, Molly.
Thanks, Molly. Thank you. And make sure we recognize you for your time and effort to come down. So thank you both. All right.
It's found your stash.
All right.
I'm back to talk traffic calming again. So just a reminder, and so we have the commissioner. We are in the process of updating our neighborhood traffic calming program. Apologies. I was going to go be chair. Okay. So tonight, that I will be in front of you before, we ask for your support of the updates to the program. So I want to make sure everybody understands what the adoption process for that is going to look like. We're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into the updates to the program itself. I know I shared high level where we're looking to go, but we've done some more work and we have some more information. So I'm going to walk through that step by step. And then I'm looking to hear from you all. I'm looking to hear questions, additional information that you'll need to make a decision about recommending the updates to the programs, or any concerns that you have about the updates themselves. So, the adoption process. So, the information shown in gray is where we've been. You'll recall, for most of you, that I've been here a couple times to share along the way. Here tonight, June 3rd, I'll be going to City Council with a work session to discuss updates to the program. When we come back to you, tentatively at our August meeting, we will have the draft of the program. We'll have all the documentation associated with that, and we will be asking for your support of the recommended updates. That will be followed by approval at City Council, much like traffic commission issues. That will be a consideration that will be asked to approve. And we are targeting September for rollout of the new program. So as I mentioned, I think you've all seen this slide before. I am going to walk through each of the steps in a little bit of a deeper dive. But I do just want to show overall all of the steps along the way. We are looking at this being about an 18-month process starting in July. We're tying that to fiscal year because the reality is funding dictates how much traffic calming we can do. So we know how much money we have July 1. That will be our starting point at which we'll start prioritizing, developing the plan, implementing some temporary measures, and then have a final plan in construction looking at fall of the following year. And as you see, and we'll talk through here, there are planned touch points with community members at most of the steps along the way. So step 1 is project prioritization. We are working closely with our GIS team on this step. They are looking to build a data dashboard that can help us with this. So the first piece is eligibility. We've already been through that process with them, determining what streets are eligible. We are not making substantial changes to the eligible streets from the current program. So that'll be local streets, neighborhood routes, and our 2 lane collectors that are owned and maintained by the city of Beaverton. From the length perspective, we are eliminating streets that are less than 600 feet and in a cul-de-sac. It's too far to have enough space to get effective traffic calming on those streets. And then we are capping the upper length at about a mile because we want to make sure we've got implementable projects that we can afford on these streets. The second piece is data collection and analysis. As we set this program up, there will be a large lift. We're in the process of gathering a bunch of data right now. But as we move forward into future years, there will be less effort required there. Where sidewalks are in the city, unfortunately, don't change that much. New streets come online, we'll add those in. But we're also looking at things like transit stops. Those don't move that frequently either. So there will be some data that's gathered on a yearly basis, but there's also a large lift that's happening this first year and will need to occur every year. And then the last piece of that is prioritization. And that's actually looking at the streets that we're identifying with the highest need. Currently, in a given year, we can afford to implement traffic calming on 3 streets. So we're expecting that trend to continue as long as there's funding available. Identifying these kind of top 3 to 5 streets and moving them into the next phase. Just to show you, I know it's a little bit hard to see on this, the streets shown in blue are all the streets that we have determined as being eligible for this program. Again, that's based on classification, so local streets, neighborhood routes, or 2-lane collectors owned and maintained by the city of Beaverton. And then that does include lanes as well. So looking to eliminate some of our streets that end in cul-de-sac or maybe don't provide continuous connection. So the next component will be that project prioritization. And we are expanding the criteria that we use to score and prioritize streets. So we will be looking to score each of those eligible streets that I just showed on that map based on the criteria shown on this slide. So I'm going to quickly walk through what we will be looking at for these. So on the land use side of things, that's going to be based on proximity to land use that we know people walk and bike to. So, and we're looking at within a mile because that is a comfortable distance for people walking and biking. The number one land use in that is going to be school. So every time there's a school within a mile of the street, they're going to receive the highest number of points. Other land uses we're considering are parks, libraries, senior centers, and like neighborhood commercial areas. So really trying to capture where we think people might be walking on our neighborhood streets. The next one is speed, and we are not proposing to change the criteria for speed from the current program. So today, the street receives 10 points for each mile per hour over the 85th percentile that the observed speed on the street is. And then we also have the percent of vehicles over the posted speed divided by 3. So those criteria exist in the current program, and we're not making any changes to those. Similarly, volume divided by 100 will be a scoring criteria. So our higher volume streets are going to receive a higher score under that criteria. The next one is sidewalks. And the scoring for this is going to be based on the presence or the lack of sidewalks. So when we know a street doesn't have sidewalks, that means people that walk on that street are in the street, and we want the speeds on those streets to be lower. So streets without sidewalks are going to receive the highest score. If there's some gaps in the sidewalks, or maybe there's just sidewalks on one side of the street, they're going to get kind of the middle tier. And then streets where there are complete and connected sidewalks are not going to receive any points. Again, that's really in recognition of the fact that we want vehicle speeds to be lower when we know pedestrians are sharing the space with them. Similarly, on the bike facilities, so we do have a few collectors that are in this. Our standards for collectors include a bike lane in each direction. So anytime we have a collector street that is missing that bike lane, they're going to get the higher score. Similar to sidewalks, there's a lower score for gaps, and then if that's complete, there's no points awarded there. For our neighborhood routes and our local streets, in the city's active transportation plan, we have streets identified as bikeways. Those are streets where we're intending for people to be walking and biking and connecting from their local neighborhood to some of our larger corridors with bicycle facilities. So anytime we've identified that street as a high priority for bicyclists as a bikeway, they're going to receive more points for that. On the equity side, we are working with 2020 census data for this, and we're looking at social vulnerability factors, and we're looking for census tracts with a higher rate compared to the Beaverton median. So we have 7 different criteria identified there. So it's low-income households, households with low or no vehicles, people under 18, adults older than 65, people with disabilities, Hispanic or Latino or composite people of color. So a number of social vulnerability factors that we're looking at, and again, based on the US Census data to gather that information. On the crash side, we're looking at the number of crashes that have occurred on the street, and we are considering points higher if there have been crashes that resulted in fatal or serious injuries. We know those don't happen on these streets very much, so we don't expect that to account for a large number of the crashes. And then having a step down as you have just injury crashes or property damage only. So some tiered scoring there as well. And then on the transit side, And this is one, again, where we're scoring based on proximity. So the closer a street is to transit stops, the higher it's gonna score. And that's gonna be based within a mile radius. So again, understanding, we expect people comfortably walk about a mile to transit. So looking at proximity through that lens. So moving on to developing the plan, this is going to begin with community outreach. So much like our program today, we are going to host a neighborhood meeting. We're going to go out and talk to the community about what they want to see on their street for traffic calming. Apologies. So the first step there is actually just going to be notifying them that they have qualified. I'm getting ahead of myself. It's late. I apologize. So starting with, we've identified your street as a high priority for traffic calming. We are going to share some information about the program and show what traffic calming could look like. At that point, we'll be coming up with a plan, some ideas about what could work for their street, and then going to that community meeting. So really leaving that opportunity to collaborate with the community and make sure that we're gathering input on a plan before we put anything in place. So step 3 in the new program is going to be temporary measures. So we are actually going to be taking that plan that we developed with the community and installing some temporary measures. There's a number of different devices that the city can purchase to do this. There are speed cushions that you can purchase and are installed in the road and can then be removed. There's temporary curbs that we can use to build things like medians or traffic circles and curb extensions. So we'll be putting those out there. Those are intended to be in place for about 3 months, and then we will be gathering data. So we'll be going back out, collecting speed and volume data, because we want to measure how effective these devices are at actually achieving the goal of lowering speeds. And that's going to be paired with a community survey. So that's going to be the opportunity for the community to tell us, did they observe a change in behavior? Did they experience people driving slower? Do we need to think about moving that speed bump? Or consider some different alternatives. As part of developing the final plan, we may begin with a community meeting. If we conduct that survey, everybody thought that the devices worked great. The data indicates that they achieved the goal of lowering the speed, and we're not hearing concern. We may just move to finalizing the plan, but we are holding that space there. If we hear concerns from people through that touch point, we will go back to the community and talk about what that needs to look like. Following finalizing the plan, we will be back here for the traffic commission hearing, and similar to this process today, traffic commission will be asked to approve the list of final projects before we go to step 5, which is construction of the permanent devices. So that's been a little more of a deep dive onto the process itself. And then one other component we have worked on since I was last here is we actually wanted to test this out. Is it going to work? And are we going to get what we're hoping to out of this program? So we picked 10 streets throughout the city. We wanted to pick streets in different areas of the city. We also picked streets that have applied for traffic calming before and didn't make it through the process. We picked streets that people requested traffic calming and they didn't qualify. So we tried to pick a variety of different streets that we've interacted with before in a variety of areas to test the scoring process, the ability to gather the data and make sure that everything was working as intended. So based on that, these are the 10 different streets that we evaluated as part of this, and you can see the total scores there. So of these 10, Diamond View Way receiving the lowest score at just 85 points. Lombard Street receiving the highest score at 333. So if these were the streets we're evaluating, we'd be looking at projects and advancing Center, Laurelwood, and Lombard into the process just based on the highest score. Then a lot of detail on this next slide is printed off in your packets as well. But did just want to show how that score was composed. So you can see all the different colors there correlated to the different criteria. And as you will see on those top 3, the speed on those streets really being a contributing factor, as well as the sidewalks for, so indicating that those are, streets that, or land use, sorry. So there's some schools, some parks, some libraries in those areas, so, really driving those scores up on that. With that, I'm happy to take any questions or, hear any feedback. Like I said, I really would like to hear if there's additional information or questions that you all have. Because the next time we'll be back here, we'll have the draft program. And we'd like that to reflect feedback from you tonight. And then, as I mentioned, we'll also be, in front of council in June.
Commissioner Miranda?
First question, I have a couple of questions. First question is, so let's see. Let me ask you this equity, right? So you said, financial, what did you say?
We have low income, so that's households making less than 75,000.
Okay, what else?
We also have low vehicles, so no vehicle available, is greater than 8 or equal to 8% of the people in a census tract. People under the age of 18 greater than or equal to 20%. And people with disabilities greater than or equal to 11% of the population. Hispanic or Latino greater than or equal to 17%. And then we have composite people of color greater than or equal to 22%.
So the two last areas, I don't understand why, I mean, nothing against anybody, but why would you consider their streets? Doesn't make sense.
So we are working with social vulnerability factors here identified by Metro, so the regional government, and they produce and map a lot of this data for us. And that's also getting at the recognition that neighborhoods that are predominantly people of color historically have seen less investment. So that is the factor that's being considered there. And by less investment, I mean less investment in infrastructure, in social services.
That's interesting. Okay. I just find that
It's also the city council direction. They directed us to consider this as a measure in selecting projects and prioritizing the project.
Yeah, it's almost, I mean, okay, so how it sounds is to me, just a comment that, okay, because somebody is Latino, they are in a poorer neighborhood or something like that. Or like you just said, in a neighborhood that is not as invested. My neighborhood has many Latinos and it I would not say that. You know, so anyway, that's just weird to me. Yeah, please, interrupt me.
I will not, I don't want to be rude. And I don't think you meant the way that it came to me was it's their street, is what I heard. I'm like, well, what? You said something about is why would their street is in where the people of color are living, because it's all, they all lived on the same street. And I know you didn't mean it that way, but that's what was said. But the whole point of some of the issues that were being brought up is that the word, we don't want to talk about diversity, inclusion, and equity, because another word, it can be underserved. And that's what the whole point that they're saying they're being asked to look into is because I'm not saying anybody can even less money or even poor, but there was someone, again, that gentleman who was here, he was not any of those, but they were underserved. And the whole point is to make sure those who are not being served, and that, I'm sorry, I got a super compassionate heart. I'm just trying to, it's like, it always pulls on me to want to make sure those who are not getting represented are being represented. And that's why those numbers may have been skewed in that way, to make sure those who aren't able to speak for themselves or aren't speaking for themselves, maybe they don't speak really good English, I don't know, I don't speak good English sometimes either. However, whatever is causing it, that they are served. And that's what I'm trying to
say. I see.
That
That's enough for them.
okay? Commissioner Ben?
You know, I totally understand this the survey, that makes sense. I mean, I just didn't understand it because it wasn't in that sentence, sounded right. Okay, it actually, to me, I thought it was insulting. So that's why I did not mean to demean anything, I just felt that was insulting, to put it like this. That's why I was like, wait a minute, but from your perspective, totally get it, it's a service. So the other question I had was community outreach, draft a plan, and then you have a community meeting. And
Yes.
if the people really don't want that.
Yes, so that's what the temporary measures are for. So we want people to be able to experience the change with the devices in place. So, we are going to identify that their street's a high priority. We'll reach out and we will share. Your street has been identified as one of the top 3 streets needing traffic calming in the city. Here's why, and here's what that might look like. And then go through that process of developing the plan with that community input. Having that point in there where we have the temporary measures in place allows for people to actually experience it. I think we have probably all heard people very concerned about what having speed bumps on their street will be like. And there will be people who have those temporary measures in place and who don't like it. We expect that, we know that. But we also know that we don't get a lot of requests to have traffic calming removed once it's in place. Because most people actually appreciate having the slower speeds. So we are building that step in to allow for people to experience it and to have to actually try it before they say, no, they're not interested. Should we get to the end of that community survey and they're all negative and nobody likes it, that's a conversation that we'll be having with staff, with traffic commission about how to move that particular street forward in the process.
So it doesn't matter whether they all don't want to get that community meeting before you install the temporary measures. They will get those.
If it's overwhelming negative support, that's something that we are leaving the flexibility to navigate. But in most of the community meetings that we go out to, there are some people that are opposed, but there are also a number of people that are there and supportive, and that's what we're trying to lift up is the people that are interested and want it, and making sure that they're that everybody's able to experience it and try it.
Cara, if I can just interrupt, and then Commissioner, but they'll come to us, right? My understanding is, and we will be able to hear it and make it as a yay or nay.
Before permanent measures are installed, yes.
But they get it temporarily either way. That's
Yeah, but we'll still be able to see that.
interesting. Okay, good. That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, so sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Urbanski.
Yeah, on project prioritization, on crashes, you mentioned like the number and severity of crashes would be taken into consideration. I think you also need to consider what was the cause of the crash, because if it's speed, obviously would benefit from calming, but what if somebody has a blowout of the tire or the tie rod end breaks and they crash because of some malfunction with the vehicle? Or if somebody's intoxicated or crashes because they're texting or something, those causes don't really relate to traffic calming. So I think you need to separate those out and focus on in those crashes that the benefit or are related to the traffic calming.
Yes. Yeah, and that's something that we have talked a lot about, and there, one, just the level of data processing that we're trying to do, is one challenge. Also, how the crashes are identified in the crash report can vary drastically and be, somewhat inconsistent. So screening those out would take a lot of, manual review, and because we're looking to evaluate all of the streets in the city, that is one trade-off, is that there's going to be less specific at the initial pass, at the prioritization level, some of those crashes like that may be included in the score. A lot of times, things like that are reported as property damage only, not all the time, but many times. So they would only be receiving 1 point for that, as compared to an injury crash where they would get 5, or a serious or fatal injury crash where they would get 10 points. So there's still going to be quite a skew. And staff will be reviewing, like as we get to the list of kind of the top 10, 20 streets that we're seeing kind of rise up the list, staff will be doing that more detailed review and kind of identifying if there are anomalies or things like that that we need to be considering as part of the process.
Yeah, because somebody might have a heart attack while they're driving or something, it's not really relevant to what you're doing.
Thank you. 2 questions then. So it sounds like, well, I guess one's clarification. In the development of the plan, the community meeting, then it sounds like it's a judgment call by staff. You said if it's overwhelming, you're gonna know and say no, but if it's kind of like squeaky wheel, but it's like, we're gonna give it a try. That's how that decision is gonna be reached.
For going into the temporary measures, the push is really going to be to put those temporary measures out. And to ask people to experience it and try it. I think the conversation would come if the temporary measures were in place and we were still hearing that concern. That's when the traffic commission hearing would present that opportunity for people to publicly share concern and for us to change focus in terms of what is being constructed as permanent measures.
Okay, and then the final one is from the community survey, or I don't know, data like somewhere in there, you decide that didn't work. Would this repeat back up? Is there an option where it goes back up to the community meeting and you do another temporary?
So if we identify, if we're coming out of that, having those temporary measures in place for 3 months, and we collect speed and volume data, and we're not seeing a noticeable change, if we believe that's because of the measures in place, we need to consider different measures, we will do that at that time. The intent would not necessarily be to go back through the temporary measures again, just because we know what is effective for traffic calming. The most effective thing is speed bumps, the vertical deflection, and we know that. The bigger question coming out of that community survey would be if we need to consider moving specific things, if there's a speed bump that's placed right in front of someone's, living room window, or is too close to their driveway, things like that. So that's really what we would be looking at as far as changing the plan. If we identified that it didn't work and we didn't see the reduction in speed, we would need to go back to the planning process and make sure we're coming up with something that achieves the goal of lower the speeds.
The last piece, then the community survey is the public survey, not a vote. It's in the past what we had from.
So that survey, following the temporary measures, is really going to be intended to ask questions about the measures that were in place and if they had a positive experience with that. You're correct, it's not going to be, there won't be a question on there that says, are you voting for traffic calming to continue in the process?
Okay, so that portion of the program is being removed.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have one.
Commissioner Reina?
Nope, I got nothing.
I just saw on the back of some transit.
Yes.
I was thinking of traffic. So transit is what exactly?
So that's proximity to transit stops. So within a mile radius is that street, can you access transit stops?
I think that's what you meant.
Yeah.
You have that twice on this.
Oh, thank you.
You probably saw that. But anyway, the other thing was, have you also considered, like, for example, Lombard, right? Lombard is also used because then they wouldn't use Hall or something like that. I mean, right? Isn't that's the one?
Or you're asking about like cut through.
Yeah, I
Yes.
looking at you know, like people are using Lombard because they haul this crowded or whatever. As a street, that's actually what I call Metras. But, that it is used as a street in some ways and, what it seems like you wouldn't want that.
Just to clarify, is the question about if we're considering whether or not it would be used, like if it would result in people diverting to another route, or if we need to be cognizant of that as we're thinking about what we're putting like on Lombard?
Yeah, it's actually the two sides, right? One thing is you don't want a certain street to be used. And so would you consider it then in some way higher priority? Or and are you looking for, like, for example, if you do that to that street, how will that affect the traffic in other streets?
Thank you for the clarification. So, in terms of if people are using it as a cut through, that's gonna be captured in the volume side of things. So if we're seeing the higher volume, that will, result in the higher score. There's no specific criteria in the program related to the cut through, or that like people may convert to another street. I think that's something that staff are gonna have to keep in mind as we work through this and what appropriate measures may be. And if there are impacts on another street, then is it gonna raise that one in the priority as well? And do we need to think about moving those together?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Moore?
And those streets, that were on the list when you brought it, was the streets that were going to be 2025 priorities. I'm very appreciative of the project prioritization breakdown that you gave here, because I was perplexed as to a couple of them. Like, that street seems pretty calm. Why does it need calming? I actually lived near one of them for a while and was driving down it more recently, but I recognized that based on the proximity of things that were near, like the school. Well, my thought was the school being nearby meant we need some calming when those kids get out of school and are driving, or when the other ones are trying to walk and those other ones are driving. But other than that, those streets themselves are calm. The one other street had hills on it. I'm like, how do you put speed bumps on a street that goes up like this and then you gotta come back down? It didn't seem the most practical, but based on your criterion, something needs to occur there in order to make it safer, which is part of what calming does. And so I'm just, excited to see what's going to occur, how it's going to be implemented, and how people are going to receive it, because especially on Lombard, people were already concerned about how their machine was shouldering people were speeding by them. I'm like, you can't have a speed bump going up the hill, it just doesn't make any sense. So at any rate, I'm thankful for what you explained here, which helps me better understand the report that we had that specialist here back in the summer, so she was here and helped to identify some of this. Thank you very much for what's here. Again, curious as to how this is going to work hoping that it's going to work for the best of the communities are looking for some calming and things listed upon folks who don't necessarily need or want anything. I'm excited to hear that it's not going to happen.
Any comments? Next, I'd like to follow us in other parts. I think that's presentation. Anything else?
Clarify one thing about the plan, because there was some questions, with how the plan is gonna work, are they gonna like it or not? But if, at the first slide we showed, says, community engagement, and then there is a neighborhood meeting. During this neighborhood meeting, that's when we develop the plan, regardless, the federal or not. So the devices, the location, and that what the devices will be selected working with the neighborhood. Yes, the federal devices. This is an experiment right now. So, yeah, we're gonna try different devices. supervisors, but potentially, we see things are going well, and we will skip that part, we don't know yet. But the plan will be developed, working within it, it's not staff imposing the plan. Or here's what they did. Right. So similar to the existing program we have, selection.
All right, thank you. All right, is there any old business?
Yes, it's also practical. Actually, tonight there was a meeting for 22nd Street between Hall Boulevard and Montpelier. It's their first meeting for developing a traffic calming plan. On May 6th, we have Main Avenue, and the meeting will be at the Highland Park Middle School. River Street, the meeting will be on May 14th, and that will be at Section Mountain Avenue. So we are working with the neighborhoods to develop a traffic calming plan. When we finish with these projects, probably the new program will be adopted. So we will not go the survey and the what you call vote, but it's still a survey. So we may skip that piece and just come straight to the traffic commission to approve them.
Thank you. Any new business? Seeing none then, meeting in,
We are meeting.
okay, very good. Then, any final? Then we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Can they moderate the AC for us or not?
Yeah.
No.